The massive Ricari warship emerged from hyperspace like a predator breaking the surface of still waters. Its angular hull, adorned with ceremonial battle scars and victory marks, cast a shadow over Earth's orbital defense station. Commander Samantha Hayes stood at attention in the station's observation deck, her heart racing but her exterior calm as she watched humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization unfold. Incoming transmission from the Ricari vessel, Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his communications station. They're demanding to speak with our strongest warrior. Hayes allowed herself a small smile. The intelligence gathered from long-range observations had suggested the Ricari were a martial society, but this confirmed it. "Open a channel," she ordered, stepping forward. "This is Commander Samantha Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. I speak as a representative of humanity." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a towering figure with distinctive ridge-like armor seemingly fused to gray-blue skin. Golden eyes studied Hayes with predatory intensity. "I am Supreme Commander Thexan of the Ricari Dominion," the alien warrior announced, his voice carrying both strength and surprising warmth. "Your species is unknown to us. We have claimed this sector for expansion." Hayes met his gaze steadily. "This sector includes our homeworld, Commander Thexan. We've inhabited this system for thousands of years." A low rumble that might have been amusement came from Thexan. "Possession means little without the strength to defend it, Commander Hayes. The Ricari respect only power." "Then I suggest you observe carefully," Hayes responded, nodding to her tactical officer. Across Earth's hemisphere, defense platforms activated, their weapons tracking the Ricari vessel. It was a calculated risk, their technology was likely inferior, but the show of readiness was what mattered. Thexan's expression shifted subtly, interest replacing dismissal. "Perhaps there is more to your species than appears at first glance. We have encountered many races in our expansion. Most surrender at the sight of our warships. Few dare to bare their teeth. Humanity doesn't surrender easily, Commander. But we're not opposed to peaceful cooperation, if you're interested in dialogue rather than conquest." The next few hours were tense as diplomatic channels opened between Earth's governments and the Ricari command. Hayes found herself acting as the primary intermediary, trading messages with Thexan as both sides cautiously felt out the possibility of cooperation rather than conflict. Through their conversations, Hayes began to understand the Ricari. They weren't simply brutish warriors, their society was built on complex codes of honor and ritual combat. The scars on their ships weren't just from battle damage, but ceremonial markings telling the story of each vessel's victories and defeats. "Your species intrigues me," Thexan admitted during one of their later discussions. "You lack our physical strength, yet you stand before us without fear. Even now, your smaller vessels maintain defensive formations around our ship." Hayes nodded toward the window where Earth's patrol ships held their positions. "We've learned through our own history that true strength isn't just about size or power. It's about determination, ingenuity, and the will to protect what matters." An interesting philosophy. Thexan stepped closer to the holographic projection, studying her. "Perhaps we should put it to the test. The Ricari have traditions for evaluating potential allies, or subjects. A series of trials to prove worthiness." "What kind of trials?" "Combat. Strategy. Tests of will and wisdom. If your people can prove themselves, we might find a more equitable arrangement than simple conquest." Hayes knew this was a crucial moment. The Ricari fleet significantly outgunned Earth's defenses, but they were offering a chance, however slim, at peaceful coexistence. "I'll need to discuss this with my superiors, but speaking personally, humanity rarely backs down from a challenge." A smile spread across Thexan's alien features. "Then we may yet find common ground, Commander Hayes. Though I warn you, the trials will not be easy. Many species have tried. Few have earned our respect. We're used to being underestimated, Hayes replied with a confident smile of her own. It usually works to our advantage. As she left the communication chamber later that night, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was standing on the brink of something momentous. The Ricari were dangerous, yes, but they weren't unreasonable. If humans could prove themselves worthy of respect rather than subjugation, it could open the door to not just survival, but a genuine alliance. She paused at the observation deck, watching the Ricari warship gleaming in Earth's reflected light. Somewhere on that vessel, Thexan was likely contemplating similar thoughts about humanity's potential. Despite herself, Hayes found she was looking forward to their next conversation. The coming trials would test humanity's strength, courage, and resolve. But as Hayes gazed at the stars, she felt a surge of determination. Humanity had risen to every challenge in its history. They would rise to this one too, and show the Ricari that Earth's species was worthy of respect, not conquest. The first steps of this dangerous dance between species had begun. Where it would lead, only time would tell. The massive arena aboard the Ricari flagship hummed with anticipation. Lieutenant James Wong stood in the preparation chamber, checking the seals on his combat suit one final time. Through the viewport, he could see thousands of Ricari warriors filling the tiered seating, their ceremonial armor creating a sea of metallic blues and grays. The combat protocols have been loaded into your suit's systems, Commander Hayes said, running final diagnostics. Remember what we discussed, they're expecting brute force. Use that assumption against them. Wong nodded, trying to calm his racing heart. As Earth's top combat specialist, he'd been chosen to represent humanity in the first of the Ricari trials. The stakes couldn't be higher, Earth's future could hinge on his performance. Your opponent will be Kavar, one of their most decorated warriors, Hayes continued. He's won over 300 ritual combats. Sounds fun, Wong replied with a grim smile. Any last advice? Trust your training. And remember, they're expecting us to fail. That's our advantage. The chamber doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. Supreme Commander Thexan entered, his impressive height making the room feel suddenly smaller. It is time, he announced, golden eyes moving between Hayes and Wong. Are you prepared, warrior of Earth? Wong straightened. I am. Then follow me. Commander Hayes, you may join the observation deck with the other officials. As they walked through the corridors, Wong couldn't help but study the Ricari leader. There was something in the way Thexan carried himself, a blend of military precision and almost theatrical ceremony. Everything about Ricari culture seemed to balance on that knife's edge between warfare and ritual. The arena itself was a marvel of alien engineering. A massive circular space surrounded by force fields that could generate various terrain and environmental conditions. Today, it was set to simulate standard Earth gravity, a small courtesy that suggested the Ricari weren't completely without honor. Kavar waited in the center of the arena. The Ricari warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his battle-scarred armor bearing the marks of countless victories. As Wong approached, he noticed something odd about his opponent's stance. There was respect there, not just the contempt he'd expected. You face Kavar of the 3rd Battle Fleet, Thexan announced to the crowd. He stands as the judge of humanity's warrior spirit. Lieutenant James Wong of Earth stands to prove his species' worth. He turned to Wong. The combat will end with submission or incapacitation. Death is not required, but it is always possible. Do you understand? I understand, Wong replied, dropping into a ready stance. The combat that followed would be talked about for years to come. Kavar attacked with devastating power, each strike capable of ending the fight instantly. But Wong was never where the blows landed. He moved like water, using the Ricari's superior strength against him, turning defense into offense with precisely timed counters. The crowd's initial dismissive rumbling turned to intense focus as the fight continued. They'd expected a quick victory, instead, they were witnessing something new. Human adaptability and technique against Ricari power and experience. In the observation deck, Hayes watched alongside Thexan. Your warrior fights with unusual skill, the Ricari commander noted. This is not the strategy we expected. Humanity learned long ago that raw strength isn't everything, Hayes replied, her eyes fixed on the combat below. We survive by adapting, by turning disadvantages into advantages. The fight reached its climax when Kavar, frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, committed to an all-out assault. Wong had been waiting for exactly this moment. He used the Ricari's momentum to send him flying, following up with a lightning-fast joint lock that brought the massive warrior crashing down. The arena fell silent. Kavar lay immobilized, his arm trapped in a submission hold that threatened to break even his enhanced bones. For several tense seconds, no one moved. Then, slowly, deliberately, Kavar tapped the ground 3 times, the universal signal of submission. Wong immediately released the hold and stepped back, offering a hand to help his opponent up. Kavar stared at the offered hand for a moment before accepting it, rising to his feet with a warrior's dignity. The combat is concluded, Thexan announced. Humanity has proven its worth in this trial. He paused, letting his next words carry to every corner of the arena. But this was only the first test. Many challenges remain before we judge your species truly worthy of alliance rather than subjugation. Later, in the aftermath of the combat, Hayes found Wong in the medical bay as doctors checked him for injuries. That was impressive work out there, she said. You've given us a fighting chance at this alliance. Maybe, Wong replied, wincing as a medic treated a bruised rib. But did you see their faces after the fight? This isn't just about proving we can fight. They're testing something deeper, our spirit, our approach to challenges. I think that's what really interests them. Hayes nodded, thinking of the way Thexan had watched the combat. There had been something in his expression, not just evaluation, but genuine curiosity. The Ricari were learning that humans were more complex than they'd assumed. The question was, would that make them more likely to seek alliance, or more determined to prove their superiority? The next trials would answer that question. But for now, humanity had won its first victory. They had shown the Ricari that size and strength weren't everything, and in doing so, they had begun to change the way these proud warriors saw their species. The warning came without preamble. A Ricari scout ship emerged from hyperspace, its hull scarred with weapon damage. Commander Hayes was in the middle of a strategic planning session with Thexan when the distress signal reached them. Multiple vessels of unknown configuration, the scout's captain reported, his voice tight with pain. They appeared from nowhere, ignored all attempts at communication, and opened fire. 2 scout ships lost. They're heading toward this sector. Hayes watched Thexan's expression darken. Show us, he commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, showing sleek, biomechanical ships that moved with unsettling precision. They were unlike anything Hayes had ever seen, not constructed so much as grown, their hulls rippling with organic technology. The swarm, Thexan growled. We've heard rumors, but never encountered them directly. He turned to Hayes. Your trials are suspended, Commander. This enemy threatens both our peoples. What exactly are we dealing with? A hive mind species that consumes technology and biological material to expand their collective. They show no mercy, no interest in communication. They simply devour. Hayes studied the tactical display. How long until they reach this sector? Less than 48 hours. Thexan's golden eyes met hers. My fleet alone cannot stop them. Even if we called for reinforcements, they wouldn't arrive in time. Then we fight together, Hayes said without hesitation. Earth's forces combined with your fleet. We can set up a defensive line at the asteroid belt. Thexan studied her for a long moment. You would trust us to fight alongside you? Even as our trials to determine your species' fate remain unfinished. We don't have the luxury of distrust right now. Besides, Hayes allowed herself a small smile, consider this an unofficial trial. The next hours were a blur of activity. Earth's military command quickly approved the joint operation, recognizing the existential threat the swarm presented. Lieutenant Wong worked with Kavar to coordinate mixed squadrons of fighters, while Hayes and Thexan developed battle strategies that played to both species' strengths. Your ships are smaller, more maneuverable, Thexan noted as they planned. They could slip through the swarm's formation while our heavy cruisers draw their attention. Hit-and-run tactics, Hayes agreed. We can target what look like nerve clusters in their bioships while your vessels provide heavy fire support. As they worked, Hayes noticed something changing in the way the Ricari warriors interacted with their human counterparts. The earlier condescension was gone, replaced by professional respect. In the face of a common enemy, old prejudices were falling away. The swarm arrived ahead of schedule, their bioships darkening the space around Jupiter. The combined human Ricari fleet waited in formation, a mix of Earth's sleek vessels and the Ricari's massive warships. All ships, battle positions, Hayes commanded from the Joint Command Center they'd established on the Ricari flagship. Remember your training. Work together. Watch each other's backs. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. The swarm attacked with mindless ferocity, their ships sacrificing themselves without hesitation to damage the defenders. But the combined fleet held firm. Human fighters darted between the massive bioships, targeting vulnerable points identified by Ricari scanners. Ricari cruisers provided covering fire, their powerful weapons tearing through the organic hulls. In the command center, Hayes and Thexan coordinated the defense. Their earlier interactions had given them an almost intuitive understanding of each other's tactical thinking. When Hayes suggested a risky maneuver, Thexan immediately grasped her intent and positioned his ships to support it. Squadron 7 reports heavy damage to the enemy flagship. Lieutenant Wong's voice crackled over the comm, but our fighters are taking losses. We need support. Divert the third battle group, Thexan ordered. Protect those fighters. Hayes watched as massive Ricari warships moved to shield the vulnerable human vessels, taking heavy damage but giving the fighters time to complete their attack run. It was a powerful symbol of their growing trust, Ricari warriors willingly sacrificing themselves to protect human allies. The battle raged for hours, but the combined fleet strategy was working. The swarm's coordination began to break down as key nodes in their network were destroyed. Finally, after a devastating barrage from both human and Ricari ships, the enemy flagship burst apart in an explosion of biological matter and technology. The remaining swarm vessels, their hive mind disrupted, began to retreat in disarray. The command center erupted in cheers, human and Ricari voices joined in celebration of their shared victory. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Hayes found herself standing next to Thexan at the observation window, watching Earth's ships and Ricari vessels moving in formation, protecting each other as they pursued the retreating enemy. Your people fought with honor, Thexan said quietly. Not just with skill, but with courage and loyalty to allies. We have misjudged humanity. Perhaps we've all learned something today, Hayes replied. About the strength that comes from fighting together rather than against each other. Thexan turned to face her, his expression solemn. The remaining trials seem unnecessary now. You have proven your worth not in artificial tests, but in real combat, standing beside us against a common enemy. But before Hayes could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Lieutenant Wong's voice came over the comm, tense with urgency. Commander, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Ships dropping in all around us. But, they're not the swarm. They're Ricari vessels. The newcomers' warships surrounded the combined fleet in an attack formation. Their hull markings identified them as belonging to the Ricari Purity Front, a traditionalist faction known for its hardline stance against alien cooperation. High Commander Vrax, Thexan's voice was cold as the faction leader's image appeared on the main display. You overstep your authority by bringing armed vessels into my sector. I claim authority under the ancient laws, Vrax replied, his scarred face twisted in contempt. You have betrayed our ways, fighting alongside these primitives. The High Council must be informed of your weakness. Hayes studied the tactical display, noting how the Purity Front's ships had positioned themselves. They weren't just here to report back, they were ready for combat. Beside her, she could feel Thexan's tension, though his face remained impassive. These primitives just helped save this sector from the swarm, Thexan countered. Their bravery and skill have earned them the right to be called allies. Allies? Vrax spat the word. They are barely worthy to be servants. You have grown soft, Thexan. Step down now, and we may yet preserve your honor. Throughout the command center, both human and Ricari crews watched the exchange with growing alarm. Hayes noticed Kavar and Wong exchanging glances, their hands drifting toward weapons. The joint victory over the swarm had forged bonds that transcended species, but now those bonds would be tested. Commander Hayes, Thexan spoke quietly, not taking his eyes off Vrax's image. I suggest you move your ships behind my fleet. What comes next need not involve Earth's forces. With respect, Commander, Hayes replied just as quietly, it became our fight the moment they threatened our alliance. We stand together. A subtle change crossed Thexan's features, something almost like pride. He straightened, addressing Vrax again. You speak of honor while threatening ships weakened from defending our space. Where is the glory in such cowardice? Enough. Vrax snarled. If you choose to stand with these humans, then you will fall with them. All ships, open. His transmission cut off suddenly as new alarms blared. Lieutenant Wong's voice rang out, multiple impacts detected on Purity Front vessels. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon? Hayes smiled grimly. While Vrax had been focused on Thexan, Earth's smaller ships had used the debris field from the swarm battle as cover to move into position. Now they emerged, firing experimental EMP weapons developed specifically to counter advanced alien technology. Clever, Thexan remarked, watching as several of Vrax's ships lost power. You anticipated betrayal? Let's say we prepared for multiple scenarios, Hayes replied. Kavar helped us modify the weapons to specifically target Ricari systems. That revelation sent a ripple through the command center. Kavar, the proud warrior who had first tested humanity's worth, had secretly aided them in developing countermeasures against his own people. It was a testament to how much things had changed. The battle that followed was brief but fierce. Vrax's ships, caught between Thexan's loyal forces and the human vessels with their devastating new weapons, fought with the desperation of zealots. But they were outmaneuvered and outgunned. Your ship is crippled, Vrax, Thexan announced after a particularly devastating exchange of fire. Surrender now, and face judgment according to our laws. Laws? Vrax laughed bitterly. You have abandoned our most sacred laws by treating with aliens as equals. I choose a warrior's death. Multiple energy spikes detected. Wong shouted. He's overloading his reactor. Without hesitation, Hayes ordered, all ships, fall back. Get clear of the blast radius. The explosion that consumed Vrax's flagship lit up space like a newborn star. When the light faded, the remaining Purity Front vessels powered down their weapons, signaling surrender. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and rescue operations began, Hayes found herself in a quiet corridor with Thexan. The Ricari commander seemed troubled, staring out at the debris field that marked their second victory of the day. You're wondering if Vrax was right, Hayes said softly. If working with humans goes against your people's traditions. No, Thexan replied, turning to face her. I am wondering why it took us so long to recognize humanity's true strength. You faced both the swarm and treachery from within our ranks without hesitation. Your people fought not just with skill, but with honor and loyalty. We're not so different, Hayes suggested. Both our species value strength and courage. We've just learned different ways of showing it. Thexan was quiet for a moment, then said, "The High Council will have questions about today's events. Not everyone will accept this alliance easily. Then we'll face that challenge together too," Hayes replied with conviction. "We've proven what we can accomplish when we stand united." As if to emphasize her words, a joint patrol of human and Ricari ships passed by the viewport, flying in perfect formation. It was a powerful symbol of what they'd achieved, and what they might yet accomplish. But even as they watched the patrol, new reports were coming in. The swarm hadn't been destroyed, only driven back. And intel suggested they were regrouping, gathering an even larger force for their next attack. The alliance between humans and Ricari would face its greatest test yet. 3 days after the battle with the Purity Front, long-range sensors detected it, a massive swarm fleet, 3 times larger than the first, moving steadily toward Earth. The combined human-Ricari command center buzzed with activity as tactical displays showed the approaching threat. "They've adapted their ships," Lieutenant Wong reported, analyzing the sensor data. "The biological components have been modified to resist our previous tactics." "The swarm learns from every encounter," Thexan confirmed grimly. "They will not fall for the same strategies twice." Hayes studied the tactical projections. Even with the remaining Purity Front ships now reluctantly integrated into their defense force, they were badly outnumbered. Then we'll have to give them something new to learn from. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. Earth scientists worked alongside Ricari engineers, developing new weapons and defensive systems. Fighter squadrons ran joint drills, perfecting coordinated attack patterns that combined human ingenuity with Ricari power. Kavar, now serving as liaison between the species' military forces, helped bridge the cultural gaps that still sometimes emerged. "The humans have a saying," he told a group of skeptical Ricari warriors. "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Fighting together, we become something new, something stronger." The night before the swarm's projected arrival, Hayes found herself in the flagship Strategic Command Center with Thexan, going over final battle plans. The chemistry between them had grown stronger through each crisis, a deep trust forged in combat. "There's something you should know," Thexan said quietly, setting aside a tactical display. "The High Council has sent their response to my report about the Alliance." Hayes felt her heart tighten. Even after everything they'd accomplished together, the Council could still order the Ricari to withdraw, to leave Earth to face the swarm alone. And they have approved it, conditionally. "We must prove that this alliance can produce decisive victory, not just survival." He met her eyes. "Tomorrow will determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of both our species." "No pressure," Hayes replied with a wry smile. Then, more seriously, "Whatever happens, your people have shown more honor than we could have hoped for. You've proven that different species can find common ground." "Perhaps that is what the swarm fears most," Thexan mused. "Not our weapons or tactics, but our ability to grow stronger through cooperation rather than consumption." The swarm arrived at dawn, Earth time. Their bioships darkened the sky like a malevolent storm cloud, tendrils of organic technology reaching out hungrily toward the combined fleet. "All ships, battle formations," Hayes commanded from the Joint Command Center. "Remember your training. Trust your allies. Fight not just for your own species, but for all of us." The battle that followed would be remembered for generations by both humans and Ricari. The swarm attacked with devastating new weapons, organic missiles that could track and adapt to evasive patterns, energy beams that bypassed conventional shields. But the defenders were ready. Human ships darted through the swarm's formations like schools of fish, their improved EMP weapons creating gaps that Ricari cruisers exploited with devastating effect. Mixed squadrons of fighters struck from multiple angles, their different technologies confusing the swarm's ability to adapt. In the command center, Hayes and Thexan coordinated the defense with near-perfect synchronization, their understanding of each other's tactical thinking allowing them to react to threats almost instantly. When a group of swarm ships threatened to break through toward Earth, they simultaneously ordered a complex maneuver that trapped and destroyed the entire enemy squadron. But the tide turned when the swarm revealed their ultimate weapon, a massive organic construct that began literally consuming disabled ships, growing stronger with each vessel it absorbed. Energy readings are off the scale, Wong reported tensely. If that thing reaches Earth. Hayes shared a look with Thexan. They both knew what had to be done. All ships fall back to secondary positions, she ordered. Except the flagship. We're going in. The plan was audacious, possibly suicidal. They would allow the flagship to be partially consumed, then detonate its reactor core from within the creature. The resulting explosion would chain react through the organic network connecting the swarm ships. The flagship's crew should evacuate, Hayes began, but Thexan cut her off. A commander does not abandon their post, he said firmly. Besides, it will take both of us to ensure this works. The next few minutes were chaos as the massive flagship engaged the swarm construct. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as organic tendrils began burning through the hull. Hayes and Thexan raced through corridors toward the reactor control room, fighting off smaller swarm organisms that had breached the ship. They reached the reactor just as the construct's tendrils began piercing the chamber. Working together, they initiated the overload sequence, their movements perfectly coordinated after months of fighting side by side. Reactor critical in 30 seconds, the computer announced. Containment failing. Hayes looked at Thexan, seeing in his golden eyes the same fierce determination she felt. It's been an honor, she said simply. The honor has been mine, he replied, then added with a warrior's grim humor, though I still say humans are surprisingly stubborn. That's why you like us, Hayes grinned, just as emergency transporters, secretly installed by Kavar and Wong, activated, beaming them to a waiting rescue shuttle. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a new star blooming briefly in the morning sky. The swarm construct's destruction cascaded through the entire enemy fleet, their biological networks turning against them as the chain reaction spread. In the aftermath, as cleanup operations began and casualty reports came in, the combined fleet hung in space around Earth, no longer separated by species, but united as comrades who had faced death together and emerged stronger. On the observation deck of a recovery vessel, Hayes stood with Thexan, watching Earth's sun rise over the planet's curve. The High Council will be satisfied now, I think, she said. They will be more than satisfied, Thexan replied. They will be convinced. This victory was possible only through true alliance, not dominance or submission, but partnership. And what about you? Hayes asked carefully. Are you convinced this can work long-term? Humans and Ricari together? Thexan turned to her, his expression softening in the way she'd come to recognize over their months of working together. I am convinced that this is only the beginning. Our species have much to learn from each other, about strength, about honor, about what can be achieved when we stand together. As if to emphasize his words, a joint patrol of human and Ricari ships passed by the viewport, their formations now so integrated it was impossible to tell where one species' influence ended and the other's began. They had created something new together, something stronger than either could have achieved alone. The war was over, but the real work of building a lasting peace was just beginning. Yet as Hayes watched the combined fleet moving through space, she felt nothing but hope for the future. Humanity had proven itself not just through force of arms, but through the strength of its conviction and its ability to forge bonds even with those who had first come as potential conquerors. The stars stretched out before them, full of both promise and challenge. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not as separate species, but as allies, partners, and friends. The Ricari had come seeking to test humanity's strength. Instead, they had helped forge a strength greater than either species had imagined possible.